Okay, there we go. Yo,
Yay.
what's up, everybody? Welcome to Office Hours, episode 86. It's honestly a continuation of our Den Music Fest edition series stuff. We've got spaces. We've got another episode that we did um, 2 weeks ago, talking with Nora and Last Name Good about how Den Music Fest comes together. And now we're doing a live consultation for PATx. Nora, how are we doing?
I'm good. I'm exhausted because we're like this is the middle of Den Music Fest week, but we just had an amazing show in Atlanta. We're in our week of virtual events and then our LA show, which I'm like so excited about. I also want to show everybody our merch. Look at this, people over algorithms, because that's what we're about. So if you want one, let me know. Yeah, I'm exhausted, but I'm good. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with Pat. So excited for our LA show. We're doing it. Hip hop lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so we're doing the live joint, but of course we got to make sure that Pat gets a chance to introduce yourself. So yeah, let people know what's good.
Hey, what's up? I'm PATx. I'm a artist and filmmaker hailing out of South Carolina, Lancaster's very own, Soda City's very own. Yeah, I just like making cool stuff.
Pat, how would you describe the music that you make?
Um, I would say I fuse alternative with hip hop. I think both of those worlds are very like unapologetic and very thought provoking and similar demographics and all that good stuff. So when you fuse those two things together, cool experimental things come out of it.
So today we're going to do a live consult. We've done this before on Spaces. We did this with Tanaje maybe a year ago. But before we jump into your questions for us, you just performed at Dead Music Fest at our Atlanta stage. How was that for you? How did it feel? Any reflections or thoughts you want to share with folks?
Yeah, it was cool. I think it felt like home in a lot of ways. Any kind of local artist just knows the pros and cons of being in like a small space and whenever things are grassroots. But I always love when it feels grassroots, but it's still like successful. You know what I mean? Not we're in a hole in the wall with two people. It's like we're in a hole in the wall, but like a cool hole in the wall because it's underground. It feels very hip hop, and there's just love in the space. You know what I mean? I love small spaces where there's like 50 people as opposed to a big space where there's 100 people, you know what I mean? And we're shoulder to shoulder. Like, I love the just kind of 8 Mile feel to it. Um, Everybody was super like supportive. All the artists were dope. Yeah, and it just felt like love. So I liked it a lot.
I like that you said 8 mile feel. I was like, I'll take that. I'll take that. And if y'all miss Pat's performance, you can catch him and all the other performers on Live Hip Hop Daily's live stream. So the whole Dead Music Fest, the whole Atlanta stage of Dead Music Fest is available online. So you can see Pat, you can see Paid in America and Big Sant, you could see Yana, King Cooley, Goody Supreme, Uncle CJ, Rent Stew, Tino.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like I gotta like name all my kids. We had an amazing lineup. So, anyways, if you missed the show, we're gonna jump into these questions. But if you missed the show, check out our partners at Live Hip Hop Daily, because the whole thing is there, and it's like you could be there vicariously.
Yeah,
Um, Wait,
definitely do that.
sorry. For those of you who are watching, hi, hello, and welcome to Office Hours. Sto and I do this every 2 weeks. We answer all your music business questions. And if you have any questions and you're watching live, drop them in the chat. Questions for us, questions for PATx, or drop them in the comments afterwards. We always come back and answer them. So without further ado, Pat,
Yeah.
what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? What are your questions for me and Sto?
For sure. I guess my first question is there's always kind of a seemingly a disconnect between quality people in this space and access to like quality resources. And so, where do you think that disconnect is? And just to kind of give you a point, there's Den Music Fest. There's things that we put on in Colombia with Black Nerd Mafia and all these kind of smaller platforms, right? That have great intentions, that are really tapped into the community, that try to put on events and whatnot and are successful at it. But where's the disconnect between that and having it at a larger venue, or having access to larger crowds and opportunities, et cetera, where we have things that are a little bit more predatorial, that are in these venues, that have access to capital, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you think that disconnect comes from?
So, do you want to go first? I have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I've always felt like, and again, like I don't think it's entirely um, this way, I guess, but like some of it, I've always felt like has come down to research, um, and having those extra conversations, I think, beforehand, because I feel like a lot of these bigger places will show their hand eventually. Um, even the places that pretend they're for independent artists and this and that and the other, eventually, if they're not doing it correctly, like they eventually get found out and whatnot. And so I think a lot of it just comes down to genuine research and not kind of, I don't like saying shortcut because I don't think artists necessarily see it as a shortcut, but like, you know, I think there's so many opportunities thrown in artists' faces, like, hey, pay me just $100 and I'll get you on this playlist that'll be on the front page of insert platform here. And so I think some artists see that and it's like, ooh, 100, that's not that much, like easy. But through research and I think actually, even talking to some of these people, you learn like, oh wait, they're actually not doing really anything. And so for me, that's where the biggest disconnect I think comes from. And also like kind of wanting to be patient before we get to these bigger spaces. Like I think some artists are like, all right, I made a record, I want to be at a big stadium. And it's like, oh, like that's not how it works for really any of us. And so I think managing expectations and stuff like that is part of it too.
That part's really important too, because if you've never performed at a 5-person venue, you're not like, how will you know how to control 100-person crowd and then a 200-person crowd? So there's value in like the growth, because as an artist you get to develop your skills, you get to make mistakes when the stakes are low, so that when the stakes are higher you've already learned all of that, and then you get to build an audience that grows with you, so they're really bought in and invested, and they're like day one, like there's a real value in day one fans. So I know a lot of artists want the like 0 to 100, but that doesn't actually build you up for long-term sustainability, assuming that's what you want. Like some people build their career on a quick moment and then they want to flip it into something else. But if you're trying to be like a musician, then there's value in building that like solid foundation. The other piece of it is like, quantity isn't necessarily quality. And so I would question the idea of like, why do we even want bigger stages? All you really need is 100 fans who are really invested, who really show up, and that can really sustain your career. And so sometimes the pressure for like bigger or more venues, more streams, bigger is counterproductive to what as an artist you might actually want for yourself, or the kind of career you want, or the kind of business you want to build around yourself. And that I think comes from external stuff that says you're not really an artist unless you're doing these numbers, or you're not really an artist unless this person is talking about you. And that's all like white supremacist capitalistic bullshit that tries to like mainstream a certain kind of art, rather than allowing there to be like the diversity of voices and sounds and stuff. But you don't need, I think the first step of it is questioning like, why are these the goals that you've set for yourself? And do you actually need it? And does it fit into your values, your strategies, your intentions, rather than just that's what you're supposed to do?
I think, and there's definitely kind of like a sweet spot for all of it. I do think that like traffic's important, right? Because if there's a percentage of people that are gonna convert and become fans and whatnot, if that pool is bigger and that's your actual target audience, like there's benefit to that. Not necessarily that you have to have 1 million streams, right? I'd rather have 100 people stream it 10,000 times than to have 1 million people stream it once. You know what I mean? So there's validity in that. but yeah, it's just kind of like, where is that sweet spot to where it's enough of a platform or enough traffic to where we can start looking at things like analytics and start deciding like, hey, it's kind of viable for me to go to this city and do a show, or hey, like, I've made enough sales on this particular shirt, maybe I should print some more of those, rather than like, I have two designs and one person bought this one. Like, that's not enough like data to make a sound decision versus like, I sold out of this one, or 20 people bought this one and only two people bought this one, you know. And I think that's a hard to navigate for those artists that are kind of like looking at analytics and data and whatnot to kind of make decisions, because we don't necessarily have enough information and numbers per se to kind of do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and you're right, because when you're early in your career, a lot of it is like making it up as you go, and it's trial and error, and it's guesswork, and there's also like a building it so that you attract the audience that you want, rather than looking at the analytics and seeing the audience that's found you, right? There's two sides to that, and so there is like this element of discovery. But if you are really clear about, and we talk about this, Sto and I talk about this a lot when we talk about like really finding your niche. If you're like, this is the audience that I want, and you understand their psychosocial needs and behavior and how they spend their time in virtual spaces, then you can go exactly where they are and exactly like draw them in. And so then you might have a numerically small but highly activated fan base that you don't need to do the analytics study, because you've already determined who they are. So you have a lot of choices there. And I think the tricky part when artists, two things happen when artists start to really look at their analytics. And one is, oftentimes, to your point, like the sample size isn't big enough. And so it's not accurate information, but they also overlook the information that they are getting. So when your audience is, and small is like less than 100,000, right? Less than even like 200,000. If you have those small numbers, what really matters is the engagement that you're getting. What are people commenting on? Like, use your stories, ask those questions, do a live and see who shows up. That might not show up in your analytics, but that kind of qualitative data tells you a lot. Right. So that's one. Two is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Like, I think artists expect perfection. Y'all, you've never done this before. Make a mistake, like order 25 shirts and none of them get sold, and figure out what you have to do with it. Like, there's value in those errors. And then the third thing that happens when you focus too much on analytics is you start to create and speak to the algorithm rather than to your fans. And then the algorithm, you're like, oh, I got to get on this trend now, or oh, and then the relationship to your audience can become, if you're not careful, the relationship to the audience can become diluted. And with early career or smaller artists, what you're really banking on is your fans, that like real human to human relationship with your fans. And so if you give that up for the algorithm or for analytics, that's a big risk that you're taking. Not saying it's not a worthwhile risk necessarily, but you've got to understand that that's a risk, because then we start worrying about like what Instagram is going to do, or versus how are my people connecting to me.
And that's why that's why a newsletter is so important, and having a website is so important, because
Discord.
And because that's direct relationship with your fans, and everything that you're hearing, like, you don't have to sift through all this mumbo jumbo that these platforms are feeding you, because like Nora said, a lot of times those statistics are kind of all over the place and don't actually give you any kind of actionable data. But if you have them on a newsletter or a Discord where you're literally talking directly to them and not hoping that they see something that you're posting on social media, now you have a chance to actually build that relationship. And now you can ask them directly. It's not hoping that Spotify tells you where they streamed from. It's, oh, I can just ask the people subscribed to my newsletter or on my Discord, hey, where are you from? And then if you put in the work, you can just throw it in a spreadsheet, and now you've got data right there, and you didn't have to pay nobody for it. And so, using that, the direct data that you're getting from your fans and supporters, that I genuinely believe that is infinitely better, at least when you're building an audience, than, you know, Steph Curry. I saw this location on Spotify or Facebook, and I'm hoping that these ads work.
And that also gives your audience, and shout out to Binak. Binak says, can confirm, and dropping in to show some love. So hurt about missing Atlanta, but I'm loving the week of activities. Thanks, Binak.
And definitely want to acknowledge the 8-9 people watching. I can't see like your names and whatnot, but if any of y'all are my folks, shout outs to y'all. I appreciate you. And if you're not my folks, I still appreciate you.
Yeah, and if y'all are watching, let us know you're here with us. Drop comments in the chat. Tell Pat what's up. The other thing I was going to add is Life and Katie says, always a fan of having direct communication with your fan base. There are so many ways to create your own unique space through newsletters and your site, and a huge fan of Discord. Same. I love Discord. Sto and I have a whole episode on Discord if you're not familiar, because it cuts out the middle, right? Like the middle person between you and your audience. But the other value of going direct to your audience is that then they get to become involved in the process. They're not just buying tickets. They're, oh, I got a venue. Oh, my uncle has a bar that can supply your this. Oh, my security is going to come. So now they're here with you, and they're in it in a way that then when you become successful, they see that's that aspirational quality. Binac says Pat launched the community a couple months ago. That was supposed to come after Kang. Pat, do you want to talk about your community a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I started a community called the Extras. Like I said, I'm a filmmaker, and a lot of times, I guess the whole kind of story behind it, just a quick blurb, is that extras are kind of seen as like the lower tier roles, but without extras, you wouldn't have very important scenes be executed, right? If there's a big city and you need people running from a huge monster and you don't have extras, well, now it looks like a ghost town. And so, like, extras play a huge role, and sometimes they're underlooked, and that's something that I really resonate with. And so people in my community are individuals and are equally as important. There's no lead role or anything like that. And so they get access to exclusive content and lyric breakdowns. It gives me an opportunity to like teach other creatives how to do stuff. They get input on what songs get dropped. They get access to my entire catalog, whether it's on streaming or not. So it was really it was important for me to try to give as much value as possible to people that are like early adopters, you know what I mean? Rather than like holding out until the numbers and this happens and that happens. You know, I have a lot of value to give now, and I'd rather give it to the small group of people that were here, you know, before the bandwagon or whatever the case may be. So shout outs to them.
And if people want to join that community, where do they go?
Yes, you can go to the website IamPatx.com, because I am PATx, and it's one of the first things that you can click. It says join the community. There's a description of everything that you get. I'm about to exclusively release projects offline, direct to consumer. So any albums and stuff from PATx will probably be through that community or direct to consumer. So yeah.
Cool. And I let's put it on the screen for people. I am PATx.com. Also love the connections that are happening in the chat. People are like, hey, friend. So I love that. What else is on your mind, Pat? Other questions that Sto and I, as we come up on the 20 minutes. Also, if you're still watching, make sure you click that like, click that subscribe, share this, because this is how we create new normals in the music industry and show that there are other ways of building a career, of being values aligned. You don't have to sell your soul or sell out other people to be successful. There's like ways to do it, and it's real. Y'all know I can talk about that. Neely Rapp says PATx is the GOAT. Shout out.
Love seeing the fans come through. This is great.
I love when fans love. I love fan love. Yes, Pat. What else can we talk about?
For sure. And all of them are incredible. Neely, Khadija, Candace. I think kind of piggybacking off of this idea of community. It's a hard thing to build, and So I guess one of my questions is cultivating community and also like my audience, like we're adults, you know what I mean? So it's not like I'm trying to convince this high school kid. I mean, I'm sure I have high school fans or whatever the case may be, but it's like, yo, we got jobs, like people are tight on bread, or in the apocalypse of times, it seems like, you know what I mean? There's so much shit going on, so it's like, and here I am over here, you know, stream my latest single or whatever the case may be. So it's like I never hold it against people whenever they're not as engaged, or you know, the community is not like as responsive, or whatever the case may be, right? And so how do you navigate that whenever you know the people are in here because there's love and support, right? But we're all adults and have things going on, whereas whenever you have a younger audience, you know, Casanat, like his audience can sit on YouTube for 6 hours a day, or use their Robux or whatever the case may be, you know what I mean? Versus like, I have an adult fan base that has shit going on, that has kids, that has jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you navigate reaching that type of audience?
That's such a good question. I think there's, in some ways, like, there's pros and cons, right? Like the adult audience might not have the time, but once they find you, they don't want to go look for another one. So they're going to be like, you've got them forever. And so there's a little bit of like understanding what's the value that they get from you. And the value is never the music. Like the music is cool, but we rarely become fans because the music alone. What's the thing that they get? Is it a break? Is it reprieve? Is it something aspirational? Is it they're tired of like being a mom? So in the PATx community, they get to be like the hip hop head they always were. Like, I don't know, whatever it is. And this goes back to really understanding who your audience is and what makes you different from everyone else. So like, why do they find you? So then once they have that value, you just stay consistent. Like as an artist, that's your only responsibility, is to stay consistent and understand that the audience, like just because they're not loud doesn't mean that they're not active or engaged. So like I run a Discord community, and I would say maybe 20% of people are like posting and sharing and commenting, and they come to things, and the other 80% lurk. That doesn't mean yeah, Sto's in my community. I never see Sto talk, but I know he's there. And so like, it doesn't mean that they're not getting value. It means that they just take what they need, different things. And so part of the artist's job or the curator's job becomes offering different kinds of value points depending on what people's lives might look like. So that they can pick and choose, like, you know, maybe some things like virtual and they can access at any time, and some things just always there, and some things they have to come to prepared, or maybe you do kid friendly things if they have children or whatever it might be. Life and Katie says, facts, I'm the supporter that will churn you up, but when I'm going through real life, I may not be as active, but I'm still actively consuming the content. Binac says, if you at me, I'll be there. So like, part of this, I think, is understanding the unique life cycle of your audience and then building the community so that it fits their needs while staying consistent, so that whenever they choose to come back, they come back, that you're there. There's something that they're not coming back to an empty house. There's always like food on the table for when they return home. That's a weird metaphor, but you know what I mean.
No, you nailed it. And yeah, so it's like a lot of it is just, even I think some artists forget to like appeal to like the humanity of it all. So like one thing, especially as we enter holiday season, that me and Nora talk about all the time is like, holiday season is supposed to be yippee and super joyful, but for the majority of us, it's pretty damn stressful, right? And so appealing to that, even just being like, yo, like I'm already tired from holiday season. How are y'all feeling? Yeah. That automatically gets them involved. And like Nora was saying, and you're already doing this, but it's just like, now they're a part of the rollout. They're a part of the community instead of just observing from afar, being told to run up, insert link here. And so, especially as things ramp up for the holiday season and stuff like that, like it's really just about understand or like showing. We say this to artists all the time. It's not just about the artist; it's about the person behind all of that, right? And so, when you're speaking on like again, even just the process that you're going through, whether you're making music or buying gifts or whatever, like that'll automatically appeal to them because you're bringing them into your world. And I think that's really where the kind of building of a community actually comes in. Like Nora said, it's not just the like all of us like insert artists here because they made a banger, but you know the artists we're tied to because we relate to them on some deeper level, right?
For sure.
Well, and like community is a reciprocal relationship. So what are you offering besides the music? And that's the part where like when you show your vulnerability or your personness, your humanity, and that could be the behind the scenes stuff, that could be the burnout story, that could be, hey y'all, I'm taking a break. Bingo. And then I'll be back in a month, but like I just need to unplug, like whatever, because that then allows you, and again, especially if we're building for the long term, you're role modeling how you want your audience to act, because your audience is going to take its cues from you, but you're also creating your boundaries around the relationship you want to have with them, so that if you do need to take a break, or you do need to not make music for 6 months, or you do, that relationship is there and they're receptive to it, so that you can be a human as well as an artist.
Right.
But you can't not be vulnerable and not put in and then expect your audience to show up for you. Maybe you can do that 20 years from now, right? Where you could be like a Beyonce and never do interviews, or be Doom and like hide behind a mask, or, you know, like you can grow into that. But at this stage, I think we have an episode about this, like being mysterious only creates disconnect from your audience.
Yeah, I'll show Candace's message, because at first I was like, worming? Is that something that that I'm not aware? Is that a trend that the kids are doing these days or something like that? But
seeing Pat's regular uploads, it's inspirational. And when I don't see them, I know that he's working or simply taking a break. And then Life in KD says, I definitely agree. It's hard to navigate consistency as a small content creator, sometimes because today's society tells you that if there's no engagement, you're not good enough or not doing enough. But I've learned that leading with vulnerability actually puts you in front of your true audience. And that's the part, right? Like consistency doesn't mean you have to do it every single day. Consistency just means you do it regularly enough, and you're intentional, and you show up in the same way each time, so that people can get to know you, get to like you, get to trust you, so they can do the things that you want them to do. Right? We're not sending newsletters every day, but we send newsletters once a month or every couple of weeks or whatever it might be, enough to create a meaningful touch point.
I just want to make sure that I touch on the vulnerability part. Like that is so important, because like even for us, like people think we're just like, get a website, meet more, but it's just like, no, if we don't show our vulnerability on here, half of y'all not watching. You know what I mean? And engaging with us and stuff like that. We have to show that we're actual people behind this platform in order for people to even pay attention to us. And it's the same with how your artistry works and stuff like that. More people will latch onto you the second they're able to relate and feel that vulnerability piece coming from you.
For sure.
Because we long for that. That's what I was going to say. Sorry. We long for that as humans.
I'm looking at these comments as we come up on, like, as we wrap up. And I love how your fans are snitching on you, because Neely Rapp says, I don't think the word break is in Pat's vocabulary. Might need to give him a definition. That man is always working. And so let this be a reminder to everyone who's watching that taking breaks is good for all of us. It's good for business. It's good for your mental health. It's good for creativity. Work might be a great song by Rihanna, but it's not actually good for any of us. And so I know that there's often a lot of like fear and anxiety about like, if I take a break, everything's going to stop, or as Life in Katie is saying, I feel like I'm not working hard enough. But your fans are still going to be there if you take a break. They'll be happy. Look, your fans are mad that you're not resting. And I'm not picking on you, Pat. I think this is something we all struggle with. And so, anyways, this is just my break to tell y'all to, my break, my intermission to tell y'all to take a break. Shout out to Binax, who says, I'm feeling the warm fuzzies because my real life community is working with my Discord community. And that's when a community, like when you can step out of your community and they're interacting with each other, that's when you've done, like, that's
incredible work.
Yeah, that's like the magic of it. Like right now, when Life and Katie is like, what? Binac has a Discord, and now they're connecting, and they might have met through PATx, but now they have their own thing. Or actually, I don't know if this was before or after, but I met PATx because Binac shared Pat's work on her Instagram, and I was like, this guy needs to apply for Den Music Fest. So I told Binac to peer pressure Pat to apply, and then he did. Like, and so when your community, like, right, and that's where the power comes from. Like, going back to your initial question of like, what do we do when we're all small and broke and don't have Live Nation resources, and Live Nation is kicking everyone out of all the venues, and our communities connect and connect and connect. And so we build an ecosystem where it's literally like people power, right? Like, it's that collective power. And I love that we're seeing it in real time right now. Like, that, I think it's such a shout out to your community, our communities, Den Music Fest, the Binac community. Like, I feel like we're Captain Planet, like when our powers combine.
But no, I think that's a really good point. Connecting people is kind of our power as far as community. Because I think that my community, or I hope that my community would know that they can reach out to me if they need, something, or have some sort of creative endeavor. If I can be a resource, then hopefully they know they can reach out to me. So yeah, I think there's a lot of power in that.
As we come up on the 30 minutes, and I feel like we could keep this conversation, like, this has been such a great conversation, but I also want to be mindful of breaks and rest and time. Pat, tell folks, what are you working on? Where can they find you? Give them a call to action.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is just going to that website. It's a really good way to know more about me. It's a good way to figure out the best ways to support, right? Like y'all said, listening to the music is just like surface level. I promise you, you're not supporting me as much as you think you are by streaming my song, right? Joining the community is super helpful. Buying merch, or even just kind of looking at the press and seeing all the other interviews. Yeah, if you want to know more about me, and I want to know more about you, it's a two-way street. So, yeah.
Amazing. Another thing y'all could do is share this episode so more people can learn about Pat, but can also learn about office hours, and can also learn about Den Music Fest, and can also learn about Binac and like all the different communities. We're not in competition with each other. Collaboration really is teamwork really does make the dream work. So if you're still here and you're watching with us, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe. Make sure you go to Live Hip Hop Daily and check out their live stream of Den Music Fest Atlanta, where you can see Pat's whole performance. And if you're in Los Angeles, we've got the LA show on November 9th. It's our first year doing the show in LA. We've done Den Music Fest for 7 years, and it's our inaugural LA show. 2 cities. We have a whole week of virtual events. Actually, right after this, we've got an artist, producer, mixer. So people are going to get to play music for each other and connect and collaborate. Yeah, like, these pockets of good people doing good things in music exist. They're not all creepers who take advantage of people anyways, let me not go down that route, but there's so many other ways to be in the industry. Thank you so much, Binac. Congratulations to LA. Congrats to Music Fest. I'm hyped, so I'm going to keep talking. So Sto, I'm going to let you just jump in and close us out.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Yo, make sure you hit the links. Tickets are still on sale right now, to make sure you hit the LA show. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Seriously, it helps us get in front of more people that need this type of information, especially live consults like this. Share it with your friends. Seriously, post it on the timeline. Hit a brother up if you do that, so we can link, okay? make sure you hit up PATx's link. It will be in the description after I edit this episode and stuff like that. So yeah, drink some water, be nice, talk nice to yourself for once in your life, get a website, and if you can't get a website, get a newsletter. All right. We're out of here.
Cool.
Go Cavs. Nailed it.